On social media, more and more people are just wanting to connect with other people. And I think that's where bigger brands either completely miss the mark or they do it just right, of understanding that their team, their community, their founders need to be on social media. I need to know who I'm investing in, who else is a part of that community, who else is using or wearing or featuring that product. So I think we need to think about it in the same way, especially as coaches and service providers. What makes you you is what makes you different from someone hiring the other person.
I'm thinking like, as somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, so now Natasha's told me like I have to nurture the audience that I have. Maybe I get growth from it, right? But in terms of connecting with them in a deeper way, what kind of content should they be creating then on Instagram, particularly for coaches and service providers who are my, bulk of my listeners?
Absolutely. I think we often hear niche all the time, and I don't think you have to niche down to the most specific thing ever. But I do think you need to focus on a few categories of content that you want to be creating on. Content pillars is what they're often called in the space. Essentially, I like to pick 5 pillars or buckets or categories that you really want to build all of your content around. And this ensures that you're not just talking about your offer, not just talking about what you do, but you're really creating an experience with your brand. Because if all I talked about was Instagram on my Instagram page, I would be boring. I wouldn't even want to consume my own content. And where that really starts for people that are listening is really think of that ideal follower. What do they do? How are they consuming content? What problems do they need help with?
Mhm.
Where are they on their journey with what you're going to help them with? And what are maybe some mutual interests? For example, I talk about Instagram, but business is a very natural part of that because I speak to business owners. If I spoke to content creators, that would be a whole other pillar, but that's not something I specifically do. Another connection point is morning rituals, mental health. I share my matcha, I share my
Mhm.
office space. All of those are things that I have intentionally chosen to share, which also kind of gives you that permission that you don't need to share everything, right? It's about
Mhm.
choosing the very specific intentional things that you want to share that essentially create your brand. So if we kind of look at your 5 content pillars, there's probably going to be 2, maybe 3 that are the most obvious ones. They're like your expertise. There's that kind of niche word, I guess you could say, of like where you really want to focus on in terms of your Instagram strategy. And to my best ability, you really want to think about how you can get really specific because, for example, there's so many people that do Instagram, but I focus on video and I focus
Mhm.
on sustainable content creation and really figure out what are the things you want to lean into to really promote your own values and methodologies and processes really clearly in your content. And then from there, you're going to add in those maybe shoulder industry things. Maybe it's like for me, Instagram and business or Instagram and email. So figuring out what that maybe related topic
Mhm.
is. And then chances are you probably have like a little personal bucket. That's where you'll add those little connection points. So that's kind of what I like to think about. There's not just like one thing, it's kind of like an array of things that creates a really fun experience for your brand. And I feel like it also makes it where you don't feel limited to only talk about one thing.
Yeah, which is really freeing. And I know a lot of people want that. I call this the umbrella content method, where like your main pillar is like the handle, and then you have these little spokes that are like related, but they're like branches
Yes.
off of what you do. And that's very helpful because I, as well as Natasha, would be bored out of my mind if I talked about legal stuff all day long, which is why I did a taxes thing yesterday. So, like, I just like to talk about other things, but yeah, all with like, I guess that with that ideal customer in mind, right? Of like, how else is this
Definitely.
helpful and relevant to them? Yeah.
Yes.
I one thing that I tend to hear a lot, especially like from my customers, is that they like to I have kind of people in 2 camps. So they like to, on the one hand, post a lot of the personal content. So more of the matcha morning ritual, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff content. But then when it comes to creating the like, here are 3 steps to whatever, people don't want to do that quite as much. On the flip side, I also have people in my community who will say, I just don't want to show up personally. Like, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about my work. And they sometimes won't even have a picture of themselves on their Instagram. I have
Yeah.
pretty strong opinions about, and I've talked about it with them about like how well maybe you can do on a platform like that. But I'd be so curious what some of your thoughts and opinions are for people in both of those camps.
Definitely. And I think it's about meeting in the middle for both of those because on social media, more and more people are just wanting to connect with other people. And I think that's where bigger brands either completely miss the mark or they do it just right of understanding that their team, their community, their founders need to be on social media. I need to know who I'm investing in, who else is a part of that community, who else is using or wearing or featuring that product. So I think we need to think about it in the same way, especially as coaches and service
Mhm.
providers. What makes you you is what makes you different from someone hiring the other person. And that's like in a really good way, right? Of like if someone doesn't like a casual vibe, if maybe like really hate yellow, like all those different types of things might mean we might not vibe on a one-on-one or you might not like my programs. So while that might feel like you're repelling a lot of people by leaning into those things that make you different, it's actually what will attract all of the right people. So yeah, I think like you have to have that personal connection point and you have to have those here and there. And there's a lot of ways to do that where you don't always feel like you're having to share your family, your kids, your home. There's a lot of ways to make very, very clear boundaries on that.
Mm,
But we definitely want to make sure that we're really being strategic with how we're positioning ourselves as experts, whether it's showing what you're doing, it's featuring your clients and your case studies and testimonials,
mhm,
or if it's literally teaching. I think it can be a variety of ways. I think people often think like teaching and showing up has to be really structured, but it could just be inspiring. Or maybe like I know one of my clients loves to rant and give unpopular opinions. So that's like her favorite way to coach and show her own coaching style.
mhm.
So I think when we really tap into how we work with our clients and how we want our brand to feel, you can kind of see of like, oh, it's like a little bit of me and then it's like a little of my business. And that's kind of how you like meet in the middle there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it feels like you're giving them like a preview of what it's going to be like to work with you. So if they're not going
Yes.
to like what they see there, they're probably not going to like your product. So you wouldn't, we don't need people just hanging around on Instagram who don't either like us or never intend to work with us. So I
Yes.
think that's super helpful.